What's up everybody, it's Man of Low Moral Fiber here. My name's Luke, and in this video I will be working my way through the overpowered level 8 Bloodshot Stronghold with Melee Zer0. This map is the area you first find Roland in when you're trying to rescue him for Lilith, shortly after finding out that she is the Firehawk. So this map is pretty early in the story overall, but this map is still quite long, and it's packed with enemies start to finish, as well as barrels. Plus some of the corridors are quite narrow, and that makes the map kind of dangerous as compared to other maps, especially for Melee Zer0, because of all the barrels. The barrels can be quite a pain for Melee Zer0, due to the fact that his main melee shields, the Hide of Terramorphous as well as the Love Thumper, have rather obnoxious novas attached to them. The Hide of Terramorphous works like a normal nova shield, where it emits a nova after it's depleted from full charge, and that can definitely deplete all the barrels and kill you, especially after you strip your shield and you may already be low on health. The Love Thumper emits an obnoxious nova actually every time you melee, so because of that, barrels are actually quite a problem for Melee Zer0, and they're kind of difficult to deal with at times. Obviously, I'll try to keep slag up on all of these enemies, especially the badass enemies, because this is overpower level 8, where slag is very, very important. Otherwise, you might not meet the health regen for some enemies, actually, if you're using a lower DPS option. Like my melee strikes are when I don't have roid damage, for example. Luckily, kunai has been fixed recently. I'm not sure when I'm going to quit saying that was recently, but kunai are back to, I guess some people are calling it kunai 3.0, but basically it can stack up to 80% in single player again, which is huge for me. Obviously, I want to take out turrets before I enter a room, and some barrels as well, so that I don't go down to one of those options very easily, because those are the most dangerous, more dangerous than enemies even. I prioritize gun enemies quite a bit higher than melee enemies because it's quite easy to skirt and health gate on melee enemies, more so than it is bullet enemies, which can often more easily place a damage over time on you as well. Obviously, some flaming lunatics can obviously still hit you with a fire damage over time. Go ahead and melee my way through this room here. Got some more bone crushers to deal with. I'll go ahead and work my way through these bone crushers. I came across quite a few of them here, and they have these shotguns which actually have a rather low fire rate, except for this one with the Hyperion one. If they all would have had different weapons than shotguns, bone crushers almost always have shotguns, but for example, if those were marauders or something that happen to have higher fire rate SMGs or something, I might have gone down there because I might not have been able to recover my health for the health gate check as quickly. So that was lucky there. You don't want to get surrounded by too many enemies like I did in that particular situation. Luckily though, when you are right next to all those enemies like that, if you go down you will get roid bonus, and because of that, oftentimes it's quite easy to get a second wind. Well, moving on into the next area now. This area actually has a lot of three-dimensional space, like height as well, so enemies can be picking you off from above, and because of that, this is one of the more dangerous areas of the map, especially if you're not in a good spot when Mad Mike spawns. He's the little mini-boss at the top of the circle that spawns after you've killed most of the other enemies. He'll always have a rocket launcher, and depending on which kind of rocket launcher he spawns with, he can be very dangerous, and sometimes even cheap, as some people would describe him. If he spawns with one of those large area of effect E-Tech launchers, he can be very, very dangerous. Unfortunately, it is hard to strip my shield on some surfaces, and you have to watch out for that, because sometimes you'll think you'll have roid damage when you won't, like I did there when I was fighting that nomad a minute ago, and that wasn't very good for me, and because of that I had to break my mini-mus fall chain. Luckily, Boar works very well with the Pimpernel, especially on nomads that happen to have a midget strapped to their shield, because it creates a situation where there are overlapping hitboxes, which will allow you to get a very strong boar shot on the enemy. Usually it's enough to kill them in one shot. Because the way Boar works, it actually spawns another projectile instead of just doubling the damage. And that works out very well for you, because with the Pimpernel, which, you know, fire crackles isn't really a word, flowers out into a 5 more projectiles, you'll end up with a lot of projectiles that can easily destroy even Hyperius and other enemies in one shot. Obviously there are other guns that can do that as well though. Now I know Mad Mike will be spawning soon because this is one of the last nomads, which is when I noticed he usually spawns. So I'm going to want to be careful for that. Oh, I guess he spawns after this last marauder that I kill. Or it's the second to last marauder. Like I said, he spawns when you've killed most of the enemies. You definitely want to be in a good spot though when he spawns, because he'll walk right out with that rocket launcher and start ruining your day if you're not careful. Strip my shield here. Go ahead and take him out with an execute before he can do any real damage. I'll go ahead and finish off these last couple marauders as well. Tried to take this one out here with the interfacer. I've been using the interfacer a little bit more in standard play recently. I forgot how much I really like that gun. It's a very, very high DPS weapon, and it works out in some situations where it's kind of difficult to use a Pimpernel. So I'm going to start mixing that in more into my melee mix. I did get fully addicted to the Pimpernel though, from my sniper gameplay obviously. But the interfacer does have its advantages as well. And so I've been definitely using the interfacer quite a bit and remembering how much I like it exactly. Moving on into this latter half of the map now. We have a couple rather small rooms that are, I'd say, more dangerous than the first half of the map. Well, I guess the room with the turret can be quite dangerous as well because of all the barrels. Enemy-wise, I'd say these maps are a little bit more dangerous. You can get some bad combinations where you get a lot of lunatic bombers, and I find that that sometimes makes it difficult. Obviously, when there is a lunatic bomber, it's very easy sometimes to get away from them with your decoy, but you still have to get an appropriate distance from them so that the grenade they release upon their suicide doesn't kill you. I've noticed that sometimes that was my problem. I'd release the decoy and think I was far enough away, but in reality I wasn't, and it would actually kill me. Go ahead and try to slag these guys here. Had to reload on the Pimpernel, so I figured I'd try to take that guy out with the interfacer. I knew he was dead once my kill icon showed up, and I figured I'd go ahead and melee the last one. Obviously, anytime you get a mini must fall kill, you get your kunai back, so that's great for throwing into the next group of enemies if you don't think you'll be able to get another melee kill, because it will do a lot of damage and stack a debuff damage for you, or a damage debuff on the enemies so that all your attacks actually do more damage there, and so that works out really well. Go into this room now. There's always going to be a badass that spawns in here. It's going to be a psycho or a large nomad usually. I think that's all it can be. I could be wrong. But yeah, it's always going to be an ultimate badass, I feel. On Ultimate Vault Hunter at least. So that's cool. Up there you can actually access the switch to get into the one chest in that last room as well. Now this room's pretty difficult because it can be a pain to strip your shield with the chain lightning on this watery surface. Because of that, I often try to strip my shield by standing really close to an enemy and throwing my chain lightning. This can be kind of dangerous though, because they might melee you right before you throw the chain lightning, which would result in your death, and that's obviously not wanted. Or at least it would put you into fight for your life mode. Bone Crushers are kind of dangerous to try to stand in their chest and melee, because their melee attacks often have large knockback, and then they don't even have to be accurate with the shotgun after that, once they push you back and to get that final hit on you to kill you. And so that's kind of dangerous, and I try to avoid that as often as I can. Go ahead and get some more kunai on these guys. There we go. Almost through the map here now. This is the last crowded room at least, so that's pretty cool. Ran into a little trouble and had to, excuse me, I'm a little bit sick today. Had to look for cover quite a bit during that particular segment, but I was happy to get through it with no issues. Midgets, though, are always kind of a problem, and you want to be careful with them because sometimes it's hard to melee them. And I noticed that that is one thing the interfacer is really, really good for. The interfacer has no problem taking out midgets, which melee and the Pimpernel sometimes do because of their really low hitbox to the ground, and the fact that it just seems kind of glitchy to me. I don't understand why I wouldn't be able to melee them. Go ahead and kill this guy. Moving on now, there'll be a few lunatic psychos and a nomad in here before we get to the cell we found Roland in and continue to the last handful of enemies on the map. Again, with the lunatic bomber coming, I knew he would strip my shield, so I would get the roid bonus on the kunai there, which would go ahead and take out that nomad. Make sure all my weapons are reloaded here for this last little portion, because sometimes the enemies spawn rather far from you, and they'll actually be out of melee range, but obviously in gun range. So that can be kind of dangerous for a melee Zero, and I wanted to be prepared for that. Have the last few enemies here. Go ahead and get kunai and a good execute on the ironclad. And maybe some kunai on the last couple guys here. At this point, I'll try to get slag and some interfacer fire on these guys. Unfortunately, my interfacer caught the grog nozzle effect. For some weapons, that's really good. For some weapons, it's really bad. Pretty much dependent on the fire rate. Anywho, we have just a couple enemies more here. Luckily, the bruiser decided to do some taunting. He probably could have killed me there. That would have been bad as the last enemy on the map. But it all worked out for the better. Anyway, guys, I'll show you my gear and skill build at the end of the fight, or at the end of the video here. I do thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope to catch you next time. If you haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, please do. That way you'll know when my next video is coming out. Again, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you next time one more time. Bye, guys.